Hey, welcome. I'm Nikita Turk, host of Threads of Voices, a space where creativity, community, and purpose are woven together through conversation. Our podcast was born from Mentor a Promise, a nonprofit rooted in New York City, where students and families facing housing instability come together to rebuild not just their futures, but their voices. Each episode, we'll sit down with artists, designers, educators, and community leaders to explore the intersection of art, culture, and humanity, where every story becomes a thread in something larger. Today, we're joined by Romina Schulz, a Peruvian multidisciplinary artist and researcher whose work explores post-colonial gender issues, androcentric memory, and reproductive rights in Latin America. Hey, Romina, thanks for joining me.
Hi, Nikita. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So I usually like to start with the why that has shaped your work, but I think for your work, it's important for me to give the audience just a little bit of context first, just because I feel like we're going to talk about it a lot, and I want them to have a little bit of backstory. So post-colonial gender issues in Peru and throughout Latin America, for that matter, have been shaped by this lasting legacy of colonialism, right? Which has resulted in inequalities that have manifested as gendered violence and a deeply ingrained patriarchal culture. So that said, Romina, your work addresses this pretty head on. Why were you first drawn to exploring gender and reproductive justice through your art?
Well, I started working around gender before I got into reproductive justice. And it was back in 2014 after my grandma passed away. For me and my family to help us deal with the grief and her death, we had many family reunions with aunties and cousins I haven't seen in so long. And from there, a lot of stories about my grandma started to be voiced. My grandma was a really reserved person, so I didn't know much about her. And hearing all those stories, I realized how little I knew about her. And a question started haunting me that was, who would I be if I had grown with those stories? Not only the stories of the men of my family, but also those stories that I felt closer to my identity at the time, which feels a little bit of an impossible question to ask because I am who I am, but I love having
Right.
impossible questions in my work. So I started thinking on that, and then my mom went to see a medium, also
Yep.
having in mind my grandmother's death. And the medium told her that she had entered the room surrounded by different women of her family, and they were surrounded her and asking her to heal whatever they couldn't heal, which sounded like a lot of pressure for my mom.
Yeah.
Um, but that anecdote stayed with me, and I think even if it's true or not true, I think yes, the question then changed. Instead of like figuring out what was my experience, it that trying to answer that question made me look outside of myself. So figuring out what they needed to heal involved for me to starting researching gender oppression, gender systems, history of Peru in relation to that, of Latin America, and what those wounds that they needed to heal could be. Because I had my own experience of growing there, but I didn't want to assume that it was the same.
Right.
So then it felt like this impossible type of question because stories lost are stories lost, and also how do you get them back? And I think in imagining that, how could I discover these stories? I started relating them to the land, and it was a really playful way. What if we could see our continent from below, and then we see all these stories that have been buried there, but we were not able to recognize. So I start portraying these big continents at the same time that drawing bodies conforming these continents, which also reflected how there is this cultural construction that is inherited from a patriarchal colonial society that is women and feminized bodies are understood as spaces to conquer as the same as land. So it created that link as well. And then I think reproductive justice in my work came a little bit later. It came mainly to deal with something personal, to find some sort of reconciliation and healing. I started working around my period and trying to portray it to make it more normal than normal, to say it somehow, to make it visible, to make the people around me used to seeing it, me wearing. So the project was as a series of embroidered stains that look like a period stain in different garments. And then it became organically something more collective. And in this process, for me to reconcile with my period, as I started a menstruation diary to see how my body changed during my cycle, how I felt on that day by day. And then that got interrupted with my pregnancy at the time. And then I went through an abortion in a context where it's criminalized by law, but also deeply socially stigmatized because it's really Catholic. So that gave me this urge, because I really wanted to work around something else. This was back in 2018, but I couldn't stop working on this. That my purpose was to portray the emotional stage of someone that is carrying an unwanted pregnancy. And I think that point is where I get deeply into dealing with reproductive justice.
Wow. Thank you for walking me through that. I think that, I mean, it's a lot to process, you know, for a young woman to learn all of that about your grandmother and to go through that journey. But the fact that you've been able to turn it into something beautiful and that you've been able to sort of unlock these truths and present them in such a artistic and creative way is pretty special. And I think that it's going to be inspiring for a lot of generations to come. It kind of makes me think about this idea of rewriting history, which obviously we can't do. We can't rewrite the stories that have already happened. But a lot of what we do here at Mentor Promise's new clothing line, Thread and Promise, it's about helping people try to rewrite their stories through creating opportunities or, you know, giving them outlets for creative expression so that maybe they can't rewrite the past, but they can change where the story is going. And your work feels a lot like that, like a form of rewriting history, of rewriting the body experiences. How do you think that creativity can be a catalyst for change, both on that personal level, the way it's been for you, but also on a broader social level?
Well, I think for me personally, creativity helps me deal with everything. Someone once told me there is a lot of grief in my work, which I hadn't recognized. And I think that is me. I think it's important to make something, at least for me, something beautiful out of this. I think it, for me personally, gives me purpose with it and helps me see the different nuances that it might hold instead of just remaining in this maybe like focus, like holding too much to something. And I think rewriting history has this beautiful invitation of imagining the impossible that can be really rich, because it also makes us look in the gazes we have unconsciously reproduced, right? And it just asks the question of what are we missing? What we think is a normal way of relating, of seeing the world around us, that is also a cultural construction, and that maybe holds also conditioning and limitation. Um, and I think to do this impossible task of imagining the lost stories, of giving maybe a little more humanity to these voids, to this unknownness, I think creativity then feels nurturing and like a way, as I said, thinking who would I be today um, if I had grown with those stories, not only of the women but of the collective struggles, in an understanding not of individualism but of community and collectivity. Um, it's an impossible question to have that doesn't look to who I am, I think, anymore right now, but looks into the future of what makes sense of the world we want to create. Um, but I also tend to think that my work, sometimes more than rewriting history, is pointing at these limitations and conditioning. Why is what I'm saying not a possibility? Um, for example, right now I'm working on a project on abortion. The project of abortion has continued, but now I'm thinking of abortion through an interdependent reproductive cycle. So that linked to not only humans, but it's more like an interspecies cycle. And the project started thinking in a pre-Hispanic textile that is from the coast of Peru. Um, and the textile portrays a series of characters in the border of the mantle that transforms into different beings, animal, plants. So I'm asking myself, how would abortion will look like if we think about it from this mantle, um, which feels like an impossible task as well, uh, but opens a lot of playfulness and imagination. And yeah, I don't know if that answered your question. I'm sorry, I drifted away.
No, it's good. It gave me kind of a glimpse too into, I never really thought about it like this, but you unlocked a childhood memory that I have repressed. I think that being a creator and being in a creative space, even if you're not using your art to speak about something very, very political, the way that your work does sometimes, I think that being a creator requires a whole lot of bravery. I used to draw when I was little. Not well. I wasn't like good at it, but I used to draw, and I would never let my parents or my siblings look at my notebooks. Like, it felt so invasive, like they were getting into a piece of me, and I felt so vulnerable. So to be able to go through that journey that you do and take these really raw personal feelings and create them in such a profound and relatable way it's pretty inspiring.
Thank you. Yeah, I think, I
Yeah.
don't know if that is what you experience with the drawings, but through creativity, through any sort of art, of expression, I feel I'm releasing something I don't fully
Yeah,
understand.
exactly.
And in a way, it doesn't evolve for me to understanding what I release better, um, but it feels I communicate something. And that's why it also feels so intimate and
Yeah.
another part, or a deeper part of myself that is communicating somehow.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I was too shy to talk as a kid, and so that's why I would draw. And yeah, it would be a lot of like the things that I wish that I could say, but was too timid or shy to speak them aloud. So yeah, you've got me thinking now.
Well, I love
Got
that
me.
that your mind went there. That's beautiful.
Yeah. I think that, this kind of thing gets me thinking about just speaking to others who are creatively minded as well, like similarly creatively minded, if that makes sense. And just the idea of finding your community. And you have led embroidery workshops as part of your work. Why do you think that it's important to get out and create art with members of the community?
Um, well, I think collective, um, creating something in collectivity always feels playful and fun, and
Yeah.
it creates complicity in a way that language sometimes fails to create right away, or at least you need more time. Um, I think I want to give a little of context to the project because it had a lot of the workshops around the project on menstruation had a lot of like parameters that I think at that time I haven't done it in years now. I do miss it, but I've been working on other subjects besides menstruation, so haven't gone back to it. Um, but it also felt really rich in that moment because it was a collective space that was focused on a specific theme. And I also created the conditions at the beginning of the session for us to talk around 3 hours on menstruation. Um,
Fun.
but it did create this trust. I started asking the participants because the purpose of the workshops were for them to learn embroidery techniques and also do the intervention of these red embroideries that look like period stains on their clothing, but in a way of finding how they could relate to their um, periods. I asked them for them to imagine they were the only person in the world that was menstruating, and how will they define it for someone else that wanted to understand their process. And then I just asked them to name them, besides menstruation, period, to just give it a name. And I think at the beginning felt difficult and shy, but as people went through, and you heard beautiful names like Glory Days, Red Season. It was this invitation to playfulness and of this complicity. And then the conversation just flow. And I think also having this framed um, in a theme that maybe you can mention it in your day to day to someone else, maybe in certain contexts it's not so stigmatized to talk about it, but you don't sit with it and dive deeply into it. And I think having these circles, this community, these collectives encounters when you're doing something creative and talk about something that you will maybe not give too much time, um, felt really rich at the time. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, that's awesome. To create a space to talk about something that for years we just didn't we just didn't really talk about, you know. Every woman was going through the same thing and we just didn't talk about it. So I'm glad that it's becoming much less stigmatized, to your point, and more spaces are being created to have normal conversations. Like, this should not be a difficult topic to talk about. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
cool. It's cool that you were able to find a way to educate the community, create this space, and also lead people through some art. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think this framing of, I don't know, a little more playful to it instead of
Yeah.
sitting right away and say, we're going to talk about our periods for 3 hours. Buckle
Yeah.
up.
Like, oh no. That's funny. I'm curious if you had any men join.
I'm sorry,
If
what's
any,
that?
like, if I'm curious if you had any males in the workshop, any men that were
We
allies
did.
that wanted to come and talk about. That's
We
great.
have one man joining. I think at the time he was really late, and I think it was more the lateness that surprised everyone because we had gone through all that beginning. Um, but it was still like a cool experience to see because it was never intended to be just limited to only menstruating people, um,
Right.
but still creating a space where personal experience on it are focused so you explore other ways of building narratives on it besides a social construct of how
Right.
you should live it.
Yeah. That makes sense. That's awesome. I'm
Yeah.
glad that he showed up and
Yeah.
was a part of the conversation. I wonder if he was late because he was nervous.
Was like preparing himself.
Right? um,
Yeah.
well, him coming into a space that he knew was going to be mostly women kind of makes me think about inclusivity and accessibility. What do you think that communities like ours can do to make creative spaces and these creative opportunities that we're trying to foster feel more accessible and inclusive for voices that may have historically been left out?
Um, I sat really long with this question because I don't think I know fully what is already being done. I now my work is mainly research oriented. Since I started working with this pre-Hispanic mantle, my only companions have been the characters of its border. Um, but I think I do enjoy spaces that center, as I said, that center play, that center imagination, that maybe embrace different ways of relating, not only through language. And I think having that as a focus and not only being profit oriented, if the budget allows to, is essential. And I consider that spaces that center how to build relationships through creativity, through play, create an imaginary of abundance, that is really important in comparison to one of scarcity. Um, and I feel more comfortable in those types of spaces, and I feel they tend to be more inclusive. Um, and people tend, or at least I know I also enjoy communicating in ways, as I said, that is not only through language, but also it can be through movement, through what I can create with my hands and find these social encounters through sharing these practices. It's really rich.
Yeah, that's so true. An opportunity to play really does kind of level things out and puts kind of everybody on the same sort of playing field. I don't know. I'm bad at sports references, but like putting everyone on
Well,
equal footing.
I was imagining more play, not sports.
I know, but I don't know why my mind went to sports.
But
This is how detached from the sports world I am.
please don't put me in a basketball court.
Right? Sounds like you and I will be sitting on the sidelines, cheering everyone else on.
Uh, yeah, I think I'm referring to also weirdness and being like have that child
Yeah.
of yourself present.
Yeah. Let the inner child out. That's
Hmm.
beautiful. That helps keeps us young and creative anyway, to allow our inner child opportunities to play. So when we can do that with others, to your point, is just another great way to build community and to make sure everybody has the opportunity to join in.
And an inner
Um,
child is always curious, right? So I
yeah,
think just having curiosity is, feels
absolutely.
fulfilling sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Romina, you have lived all across Latin America, across the US. How do you feel like that movement has shaped your sense of identity, or how has it manifested itself in your creative voice?
Um, well, I've spent the most amount of time of my life in Lima, Peru. And then the longest after that has been here in New York, that I came to do some studies. And I think is that movement the one that has shaped me the most. I'm based in New York for 5 years now. I came to do a master degree here. And when I applied to the master degree, I was living in Lima and I started to feel that how I was approaching gender started to feel like a ceiling in the sense that felt really limiting. And then I had this feeling I couldn't imagine something besides the Annunciation. I couldn't think of the complexities that always feel more creative and rich, it just felt like I need to point this violence out. And I also had a lot of anger, and even if I think anger is good, it can be something that pushes you forward. At the time, it just felt like it was not helping me to imagine other projects, to be creative. So I applied to this master degree at NYU that looked into different art projects with social issues that didn't feel black and white, that looked into the complexities of it, that escape like basic statements. And after that, it's also where I got deeper into sitting with this Hispanic mantle. And okay, let's imagine something that I'm still talking of reproductive justice. I'm still talking of obstetric violence, of gender, but now I'm playing with something that it's more complex, that it's nuanced, and I found myself being more creative again, and having my imagination flow that I felt I was not finding in my last time in Lima. And it also, I think distance always helps, not to understand the life I was having there only, but also to better understand my work, and through these encounters with other cultures, I also understood my way of seeing the world better. And now I can recognize also the unknownness that is so present in my work, that has been from the beginning trying to figure out how I could represent these lost stories that feel impossible to represent. And it has translated about in this mystery, I would say. And now I can fully see it and understand it, and also understand it where it's coming from.
That's interesting. It's something that I was kind of wondering about when I was, reviewing some of your work and a little bit of digging into a little bit of your story, and hearing you talk about it earlier. There's been a lot of challenging things that you've navigated and have found a way to express through your art. How have you managed to deal with all these heavy, pretty emotional themes and still manage to keep yourself so grounded and so well taken care of and all of that and stay sane?
Yeah, I think I need to create to stay sane. When I stop, I see myself going crazy. So then I take me back to that knitting machine. Yeah. It's just creating. Creating is my way of dealing with all of it.
Yeah.
I don't know how else to do it. As I said, I think I also need to feel it gives. I have some purpose, and it does give me that, and it actually how my brain works. It does helps me to understand, or maybe just sit with whatever I'm feeling and then let it go. It was funny because as I described this project on abortion, that came as an urgency that I needed to I wanted to work on something else, but I needed to deal with it. There was this urgency to create on it. When I was done with the project, I had the same feelings in my body, fever, chills that I had when I was going through the actual abortion. And at the end of finishing the project, and after going through these same bodily feelings, I felt really light, and I felt at peace with myself. So that is a tiny example of how it's a way of processing, and I couldn't see myself doing it somewhere else. And I feel really happy of having this way of releasing, of relating with myself.
Yeah. Have you always been an artist? Did you see yourself as a little kid doing creative little things in Lima, or is this something that kind of manifested over over the years?
I think I always had like I always enjoy classes that felt creative. I was in
Oh.
a circus school when I was growing up. Um, and I wanted to join the circus when I was older.
Interesting.
Yeah,
That would have been a different career trajectory for you.
yeah, I'm happy with what I decided to follow. Um, and then I just got into art because it was like a school assignment a little. I needed to choose between English, art, or physics. And I said, no way. No way,
That's an
physics,
easy.
English, no thank you. I'll just
That's an
take
easy
art.
one.
Yeah.
That's an easy one. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
And then I fell in love with the power that it has to communicate things that language fails to
Yeah.
communicate.
What do you think that the role that new artists coming up is in shaping cultural conversations? Like, do you think there's a level of responsibility for young budding artists to, help shape some of these difficult political and other topics that are out there?
There are many ways of being artist, and with it there are many roles. Um, I personally enjoy when art asks questions, when it doesn't feel didactic or dogmatic, um, when it feels complex and maybe it's through conversation with other people that we need to sit with the work. Uh, I enjoy I enjoy that complexity, that nuances that I think I was also sit with deeper after my studies at NYU. Um, so I enjoy people that assume that role, but there are many ways, and also seeing activists when art is also like activist and it's present in protest, it's present outside. What we understand as artist institutions, this feels also beautiful and essential as a society.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think to your point earlier, everyone has to find their voice through their, like, every artist needs to find their voice through their art, and it's going to be a little different for everybody. And I believe that there's space for all voices and all forms of expression.
Mm.
So, Romina, what's next for you? You talked a little bit about it, but I'm curious what's coming down the pipeline.
Well, right now I was lucky to have been accepted in the Air Gallery Fellowship. That is this feminist and queer space. I right now located in Dumbo, but they are moving soon. So that is gonna end up in a solo show next year, which is where
Wow,
towards,
congratulations.
thank you, which is towards what I'm working to. Um, that is this project of abortion that I described, inspired by the mantle, and it has evolved in now doing weird tools, obstetrical and gynecological tools that feel more like extensions of the body, and we're alien beings. And
Yeah.
also there is a lot of knitting, a lot of ceramics. I'm taking some wheel throwing classes, which I wanted to
Wow.
do. Yeah. I've always did hand building, so I wanted to do that for a really long time. So I'm figuring out if those pieces are also going to exist in the space, if my wheel throwing skills are not too messy and chaotic still.
Maybe that'll be part of the art. Maybe that's good.
Hey, my work is embracing the mistake because I've made a lot.
Right.
Um, so yeah, I'm figuring out that project, which feels really exciting. And I will let you know
Yeah.
when the date and the invitations are up.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited to see how that comes together because it sounds like you're going to be incorporating so many different mediums and types of art and things, and the way that you're going to connect them. I'm really excited to see how that comes together.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, our last question, we always wrap with this one. If you could leave one thread, one message, or a practice for the next generation to carry forward, what would it be?
I feel that sometimes my answers are running away from your questions.
There is no wrong answer here.
Okay. Because this, I think, is a little bit that, because I think it's for someone else to say if something I shared, if something of my research or of my work resonates with them and feels like a thread they would like to continue weaving with. And I hope it does.
Yeah, I like that. Well, Romina, thank you so much for the time today. This has been a lot of fun. Your work is
Thank you.
incredible. Yeah,
Thank you
I
so much,
appreciate
Nikita. It was
Of
a
course.
pleasure.
Good. Good.
Thank you.
Romina's work reminds me that art can be an act of remembering, rebelling, and communicating without words. At Threads of Voices and Mentor a Promise, we believe creativity can change lives by helping people rewrite their stories and their futures. Be sure to follow us to keep up with the latest episodes and find more of Romina's work at rominaschulz.com. Thanks for listening. Until next time, keep finding the threads that connect us all.